you hear what goes on in media today, and you see it throughout all across the big networks out there. It doesn't matter if they lean left, like MSNBC or CNN, or if they lean right, like in the case of Fox News. There is no such thing as a media that slants left or right. It's Democrats that tend to be more factual than they do in their assertions, in their beliefs, versus Republicans. Where do we start off with? That the problem today is unlimited campaign finance spending. And the Republicans sit here and say that money is speech. They don't want to fix what's wrong with the system. Number two, that we have the best healthcare system in the world that leaves people bankrupt, unlike in other countries. They say that it is unrealistic to have a government healthcare system that covers everyone, even though it's been tried across the world and has been implemented and successful despite some of their drawbacks. No system is going to be perfect. But what you have seen happen in other countries like the UK, in France, in Canada, in Scandinavia, shows that public healthcare is a viable and cost-effective option. Also, the problem that immigrants are the reason why all the jobs are not coming back, that it's immigrants that are taking jobs, that it's immigrants, it's brown people that are taking jobs away from white America. No, that's not the case. They fill the jobs that people don't want. So immigrants are made a scapegoat in right-wing media circles, and that's just not correct at all. It's corporate America that's shipping your jobs overseas. It's these rich men in white suits out there that are not going to give Trump land their jobs back. Also, you hear this a lot in Donald Trump's campaign, that America is just riddled with violent crime, that these gun laws are nothing but draconian to take all the citizens' guns. But the 90s gun laws were passed because we had huge amount of violent crime in the 1970s. The gun laws served their purpose in that they have actually reduced violent crime. That Donald Trump's campaign was not based on fact, rationality, or reason. It was based on fear, paranoia, and fear of the unknown. Whether it be America becoming less white, whether it be a changing political landscape. And that is just simply not true. Because you have a far-right party, and the so-called left-wing party in America is not even left-wing. You hear these kooky right-wing fascists say that, oh, the Democratic Party has veered so further to the left or whatnot, that America is going further down the left. Well, you know that's wrong, because the biggest third party in America today is a far-right political party. We are talking about the Libertarian Party that wants to do everything that the Koch brothers have sought to do, which is to cut every single program that's benefited working people. Conservatives sit here and say that government spending has not helped bring down poverty or whatnot, even though the Great Society actually brought down the poverty rate by a half. So it did serve its purpose. Obamacare did not collapse by itself. It is still there, but it's not perfect because it is written by insurance companies. And we need to get them completely out of it, because that is the most practical solution to driving down the cost of your health care while covering more people and not leaving people bankrupt with huge medical bills. You have unlimited billing going on where no one agrees on the bill, that you're not going to pay the insurance company because obviously they're billing you from someone else who's not paying you. And it's all big bureaucratic waste that happens in the private sector. And the last thing to point out, outside of violent crime and outside of our healthcare system being the best in the world, it's like, what a joke. No one is going to America to get better healthcare. No one in Scandinavia or Canada or England would tell you that, that's for sure. That all the Mexicans are, we have a huge immigrant problem, and all these people are crossing the border or whatnot, except that is not happening. More people are leaving America than entering. But it's the liberal media out there saying that we're not having all these immigrants coming across the border. Excuse me, but because it goes against your perception and it goes against your far-right bubble, it doesn't mean that a liberal media is sitting here lying about it. They're just simply pointing out what's been happening. Yes, we've had huge records amount of people crossing the border in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, but it has been going down ever since the Great Recession. All these Mexicans are not crossing the border. You see, where we've gotten today with Donald Trump, he has gotten in power with hateful rhetoric and a huge divisive spinning of the facts out there. He is filling you with fear and paranoia and with propaganda out there that is simply not true. We don't have a liberal media out here. We only have a corporate media out here. What do we see in the debates this past weekend? Chris Matthews is talking over Elizabeth Warren every single question that he asked her post-debate. Is the liberal media out here trying to make Elizabeth Warren look good? No! The so-called liberal media is talking over Elizabeth Warren and telling her that she's having a big tax increase with the government healthcare system. And they frame that question immensely when they ask Bernie Sanders, you're going to want single payer for all, but in addition, you're going to raise everyone's taxes when you do that. But they should have framed the question differently if it really was a liberal media. Well, Bernie, taxes are going to go up when we have a government healthcare system, but overall, is your system going to bring down costs for everyone? You see, if it weren't a so-called liberal media, like you see, these right-wingers just spew that crap out of their mouths, then they would have asked that question differently instead of framing that question as being a huge tax increase. Now, I am going to copy and paste Chris Matthews with Elizabeth Warren, talking over her and interrupting her. When you have these candidates out there like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and whatnot, and Tulsi Gabbard not finishing what they have to say, or Andrew Yang, for instance, then you don't have a liberal media. It doesn't get more liberal out there than having a cash dividend for every America out there. $1,000 universal basic income, but they don't want to let Andrew Yang talk. NBC silenced Andrew Yang. That is a liberal position to have UBI so we can have a stimulus in aggregate demand to help stimulate the economy. That is simply not happening when all the wealth has been concentrated into the hands of the top 1%. When you have over 20% of your salary coming in to pay for student loans, then that is eating up on the economy today. It's not people rising to upper middle class. They still feel like they are they're feeling like they are lower class out there. They have a bunch of liabilities that they still owe with interest compounded. You don't have these people becoming middle to upper middle class. When you have a skyrocketing, a soaring rent being charged to people, largely because the government has contributed to this problem with wanting to send everyone to college, that's not what it should be all about. Not everyone should be going to college. We should have a green jobs program in the South. Only the Democrats are capable of delivering this for working people. Republicans want to stick with the coal, and they have no intention of creating thousands of great paying jobs for people out there who need to have their jobs replaced with jobs that are centered around clean, renewable energy. But you don't see that in these debates out there. The so-called liberal media out there is not asking the questions that need to be asked about what is needed for America to be number one, to be the leader in renewable energy, to create a high-paying jobs program for these workers that are desperately in huge need in the South and Appalachian, in the Midwest or whatnot. This is what needs to be talked about, but the corporate media out there does not want to mention it. And when they have those left and right paradigms out there, when you have the complete fascist, libertarian, insane ideology of let's cut every government program and let's reduce taxes down to zero for billionaires, and let's just have a free-for-all society, a completely sociopathic and amoral economic system that would leave America to economic ruins if it were ever implemented. And we will see this far-right libertarian experiment be put into the test after the corporate Democrats in the center-right Democratic Party ultimately bring down what is a quasi-progressive movement. And that's what's eventually going to happen with Elizabeth Warren becoming our next president of the United States. You don't even have a left-wing party today in the Democratic Party. You have a center-right party that was responsible for draconian three-strike laws that disproportionately hurt people of color. You have your corporate center-right Democrats like Kamala Harris out there feeding into the insurance industry, saying that we don't need single payer, yada, 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 that are against importing cheaper drugs from outside the country. You don't even have a left-leaning party today. You have a center-right Democratic Party with a center-right Democrat, Bill Clinton, and with a fake neoliberal Barack Obama, and you have a complete extremist party on the Republican side with their three inverted stars on their logo. All this trickle-down supply-side nonsense you see on Fox News is corporate economic propaganda. On the side of CNN and MSNBC, when they sit here and when they say that Hillary Clinton was the winner of the first debate, even when Bernie Sanders was pulling ahead of her, saying that she is the top candidate out there, that Bernie Sanders is not electable. It's not a liberal media out there saying that Bernie Sanders is unelectable. There's no way a liberal media would do that. Only a corporate media out there. And this is where a sucker is born every single minute. Especially the people on the Republican side. Those are the biggest suckers out there. But you still have suckers out there on the Democratic Party who think that it's an extreme position to have government health care for all, that we need a moderate to beat Donald Trump. Except that's what lost the last election. A moderate lost the last election. Hillary Clinton was a center-right Republican who voted for Iraq, just like Joe Biden, and the media is telling you that Joe Biden is the front runner. That's not a liberal media, because Joe Biden is certainly not a liberal candidate. He is a neoliberal candidate. Dim-witted pea-brains out there are the kind of people out there who say that there's a liberal media because whatever ideology they have is based on what they feel and based on their gut and not based on fact and reason and complex thought processes. That's where you get the huge psychological differences between conservatives and liberals, and this is verifiable. Republicans go on intuition and what the gut tells them versus what is the practical solution. And that has been proven to be the case. Democrats have complex thought processes wanting to solve these problems that are hurting America today. For instance, like Social Security, or even a start like Obamacare, or even a green jobs program for the South. But then you have Republicans saying that government intervention to the economy is not going to work, saying that Keynesian economics is the issue, saying that you don't need empirical evidence to make economic assertions. Now, that's completely messed up. That is retarded economics, and what is more retarded than all is fucking dumbass, moronic, retarded schmucks out there saying that Bernie is a communist or a shill for the top 1%, even though he's literally the only guy running for president who is independent. There's a sucker board every single minute. The biggest suckers are the people that vote against their best interests. The biggest suckers out there are the people who don't even realize that the Democratic Party is a center-right party and it's not even a progressive party. The biggest suckers out there continue to get stuck with this left-right paradigm. And what you have is two corporate wings governed and spearheading their propaganda with a corporate media. Thank you for this edition of Tony Tell It Like It Is. I called the winner of the election, Elizabeth Warren. I called it over 3 years in advance, long before it happened. I'll have called the election here. Donald Trump is still here like I predicted him to be. I predicted the disastrous right-wing trickle-down economic policy that has added $4 trillion to the debt. I don't get tired of being wrong, and I don't get tired of crushing right-wingers every moment that I do. And last but not least, not only is Bernie not a communist, but these people say that billionaires pouring all this money into the political system is speech. That money is speech. Completely screwed up. And on top of the fact of Democratic voters making more money than Republican voters, being better educated than right-wing voters, but don't tend to vote against their best interests, like uneducated right-wing voters who tend to fall prey and are susceptible to fear porn being put out by the right wing, including, oh, America's going to be communist and you elect Bernie Sanders, whatever. That, oh, Bernie's a shill for the top 1%. Even though if he were a shill for the top 1%, they would have let him win the election. They would have let him be the nominee instead of Hillary Clinton. So, these people don't get tired of being wrong, and they do not want to learn at all. Because when I call the election, when you go back to the archives, with what I've pointed out turns out to be factually true, then you can be a free thinker and to think for yourself and to let the facts and the evidence guide your thinking versus the gut and what feels good and all this. Because I proved it here, that the last election came down to people staying at home. Extra people did not vote for Donald Trump in the last election. This is what I mean when you have this corporate media telling you that the silent majority was the people that voted for Trump. No, it wasn't. The silent majority wanted Bernie Sanders, but the corporate media and not the liberal media is telling you that the silent majority were Donald Trump supporters. Everything I said in this video is factually true because I am politically aware and I am a political expert out there. I know the ins and outs of this rigged system, and I know exactly where we got to this point today. It is not because America has been further to the left or whatever nonsense being put out there. You have global people continuing to be brainwashed by billionaire think tanks, by these billionaire networks out there who want you to think that the solutions being put out there by Bernie and Elizabeth is not attainable or not realistic. A liberal media out there telling you that Joe Biden is the front runner instead of Bernie Sanders. I can go on and on. You people out there saying that this is a liberal media, you guys are full of horseshit. Thank you very much. I call the election.